Good evening or good afternoon whenever you're watching this, or good morning or good middle of the night. Hello, hello, hello from Smart Elections. This is our election protection forum. We have a really, really fascinating, informational, and fun forum for you. And I hope that you're going to stick with us. We have two really phenomenal guests. Ken Bennett, the former Secretary of State of Arizona, is with us, and also an expert auditor, Karen McKim, who has over 30 years as a government auditor, and in my opinion, is one of the most brilliant auditors in the country. So we are super lucky to have them both. And I also had a little chat with Ken, and I know that he's a former singing legislator. So possibly, if we're lucky, he'll sing us something for Thanksgiving. But it's going to be really, really interesting. We all got through the election, and I think there was kind of a sigh of relief. Bennie, how are you feeling?
It's a little rough. I voted no on my certification yesterday, but
I'm sorry, what?
I voted no on my certification yesterday.
Wow. Okay. So we're going to hear about that, why Bennie often votes no for the elections in Memphis, Tennessee, and why we're all working so hard to have elections that we can have confidence in. So I hope that you're going to stay with us. And I'll just start out by doing a visual description. I am a pale woman with long brown hair in a brown blazer in front of a brick wall. We do these descriptions for our listeners or our participants who have visual impairment. And so we hope that they're useful. Bennie, you want to go next?
I'm a fair-skinned gentleman with a with a blue with a blue dress shirt, standing in front of computer monitors.
And that's Bennie Smith. He's our co-host and an election commissioner from Shelby County, Tennessee, as well as a real expert in terms of computer software and programming, somebody who's really helped us a lot. Alana is our ASL interpreter. Do you want to go ahead and do a visual, Alana?
Hi, I am a white female. I've got glasses and brown hair, black shirt, and just a plain grayish wall behind me.
Perfect. And I'm going to bring our other ASL interpreter on just for the moment, so that when we have her on later. Melanie, are you ready? I see you're off camera there, but yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is our other ASL interpreter, a visual description.
Hi, my name is Melanie, and I'm one of the other ASL interpreters. I have curly brown hair to my shoulders, black framed glasses on, a necklace, as well as a 3/4 length black jacket, black shirt, and a dark background.
And a 60-minute setup.
Yeah, you do look very sort of floating in the black there. So our ASL interpreters are courtesy of Sign Language Connection at the Center for Disability Rights, and we are very grateful to them. If you want closed captioning live, you need to go to Facebook, and if you click on the Facebook settings, it will show you how to find those closed captions there. We have had some input that people are a little frustrated with the visual descriptions. It does not take that long. It does help anyone who's watching who has visual impairments. And what we're going to start doing is putting a little note down below that says you can start the program at this point. So like we're about 4 minutes in right now, and we're done with our visual descriptions. So, and we'll give you another marker when we actually start content. So for those who want to just dive right in, we don't want to waste your time. So if you want to find out more about smart elections, you can go to smartelections.us. And if you want to send us an email, you can do that at contact@smartelections.us. And we love to get input from you. If you have any suggestions, if there's things that you loved about the program, please do drop it in the chat or send us an email, because that really helps us to share with other people what you're getting out of the forums. If you found them very informational, if you learned something that you never, were aware of before, go ahead and let us know about that. And if there's things that you really want changed or improved, we do listen to that as well. So go ahead and shoot us an email. And I am going to go ahead and just say that it is the giving season, and please do donate. We welcome your donations. We need your donations. We are doing work that really no other group is doing. There are a lot of really good election protection groups, but what are we doing that's unique? We are bringing you this information each month that is strictly nonpartisan. It is very rare to find groups that really try to give you information from across the political spectrum. And we have people who have deep technical expertise, like Bennie, and people who have years and years of experience in elections, like the people, like our guests tonight. It's really something that you're not going to find anywhere else. And if we don't get your support, we can't keep doing it. So we really do hope that you're going to be giving us that check for whatever it is that, the money that you're putting aside right now for nonprofits. A lot of people do make donations at this time of the year. And I'm going to actually go ahead and just put a link into the chat where you can, if you want to right now, go ahead and make a donation. Hey, to our folks who are out there, our regular listeners, Mark and Chris, great to have you with us. And I know we have had some donations from at least some of the people listening now. So thank you all so very, very much. We are immensely, immensely grateful for your support. And like I said, we really need it in order to continue. One of the things that we are working on right now is really to have the type of audits that we're going to be discussing tonight in practice throughout the entire country. Audits and recounts that are transparent and fully accessible to the public so that we really can have an increased confidence. And what we're working toward are elections that are secure, fair, accessible, well administered, and publicly verifiable. And that's something that right now there's a lot of people, if you look at the polls, a lot of people do not have confidence in our election results. And so this work that we're doing, it is profoundly important. And we have a vision, we have a real game plan of how we're going to get from where we are now to where we can really all have confidence in the results. But we do need your donations in order to keep doing that, in order to keep doing that work. Bennie, you want to pipe in anything there?
No, I think that's really good. It's really good.
Do you want to make a special plea to people to maybe get out their checkbook right now? And
yes, reach into your pockets and give us all your money. That's always good.
It's not that hard. That link takes you to an online site, and it takes about 5 minutes. You do get it is tax deductible. You get a tax write-off for that. And it takes about 5 minutes because it is tax deductible, you have to put in a little bit of your information there. So
yeah, I do want to say there's so many groups out here now where there's some charlatans out here that are really capitalizing off of people's interest with election integrity. So this is a real organization. Like the two people that are coming on the show, like they're like the foremost people in election integrity, and we have these type of people on every time we're on. It's gonna be fascinating to talk to two people who they are legit experts, like Kim Bennett and Karen. They are really good at their fields. And so you have a lot of these organizations that are just raising money off stoking the emotions of citizens and under the name of patriotism. So it'd be a good patriot if you patronize this organization.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Bennie. And we are not just having these people on our forum as guests. We are also working with them across the country to really implement these type of audits and figure out the statutes, figure out, how we can really get this done. So this is very practical work that we take this information and turn it into actions. So we do hope that you will give us that support. So right now, the first guest that we're going to bring on is Carrie McKim. And she used to go by Karen. That's why Bennie was calling her that, but it's Carrie now. It's really cute. And so happy to have you here, Carrie.
Thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. Good. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I just enjoy your show so much, and you do such great work. Let me see. Just a couple things in the background. I'm not okay. Thank you for the compliment about being such an expert auditor. But I want to point out that there's a bunch of standards called the Generally Accepted Governmental Auditing Standards that are put out by the GAO, the Congress's Accountability Office. And I worked with those for 30 years, and it's this mass reservoir of, fabulous guidance, Sorry.
Somebody know you're on. Are you on TV, girl?
Government Accountability Office calling Carrie right now.
We want our documents back.
Anyway, those generally GAGAS for short, you can remember that, GAGAS. It's this wonderful reservoir, years of experience of fabulous auditing standards, guidelines, tips, whatever. And it's just that I worked with those for so long and I know those. And if every election auditor would familiarize themselves with that, it would be fabulous. And I would not be Lulu's nomination for the most qualified auditor.
Well,
Okay.
you have a great deal of experience, and you took that experience from government auditing, and then you went into election auditing, and you spent quite a few years in Wisconsin with Wisconsin Election Integrity, and really were a leading force in developing auditing techniques. And this one technique that we're going to show people tonight, in my opinion, is the best technique that has been developed here in this country to have a hand count that is both transparent and really pretty easily performed. And you can have up to, 100 people maybe in a room watching this live, and you can stream it out to millions. And as you pointed out, the people observing never have to touch the ballots. The election officials can, handle all that. So we're going to show you some pretty, really interesting techniques that are not as widely known as they need to be. And I'm going to pull your slides up. Yes? Okay, let's go.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to put this cartoon in here. We created the position of ethics director for my nephew. Thanks for your interest, but we posted the job just for appearances. That's the main point I want to make, or one of the main points I want to make about election audits. Way too often, the election officials just go through the motions of doing something, with a hand count and calling it an election audit. So we need to stop asking, I think, for just election audits and stopping there. We need to ask for verification of the correct winners before the results are certified.
Yeah.
We want them to do audits. Yes, we want them to verify the correct winners before they certify the election results. These are the four main things I can pull out of the generally accepted government auditing standards that I want to go over. It's just very highlight. To be an actual verification of election results, an election audit requires first that it is done with reliable evidence of voters' selections. Now, this is a standard that goes far beyond elections auditing. It's a basic standard in all auditing, both in industry and government. If a professional auditor gets to work on an audit and realizes that the records that they're given to work with cannot be verified as true and accurate records of the things that he says she is auditing, professional standards require that auditor walk away and say this audit cannot be done. Now, in election audits, of course, those records are the paper ballots, and the thing that they are supposed to be a true and accurate record of are the voter selections. Now, hand-marked paper ballots are, the obvious gold standard. You can see what the voter selected because that's where the ballot is marked. Now, computer marked ballots can be made to be acceptable evidence of the voter selections and useful in an audit if the election officials have taken the time to make sure the poll workers remind every voter to verify that the paper ballot did in fact print the correct selections, and then create some kind of a document or a record that documents that the election workers did observe the voter verifying the ballot. And in that case, a professional auditor could use those as reliable evidence of the voter selections, and they could do the audit. Again, so that's, number one. It's not a verification of the election audit results if the auditors can't work with true and accurate records of the voter selections. The second big point I want to make is that a valid audit has to be conducted with detailed audit standards and procedures. And these procedures must be developed and adopted ahead of time. The officials cannot just make stuff up as they go. The thing that's most often missed in my experience is the instructions for the auditors about what to do if the hand count reveals a problem. Now, I'm not making this up. When I observed Dane County, Wisconsin's first voluntary election audit, the county clerk had given the hand counters no instructions what to do if their hand count disagreed with the poll tape from the voting machine. And sure enough, each of the 3 wards they hand counted produced a slightly different result than the voting machine. Now, those poor kids just looked at each other. They didn't know what to do. They said, oh, it was probably our mistake. This audit's done. It's a success. And no, I mean, yeah,
That
it's
was
really
it? There
yeah.
did they didn't go back and recount the machine or the hand? They just said,
No,
we must have made a mistake?
they had no instructions, no procedures for doing that. In the statutorily required statewide audits that have been in place in Wisconsin, I think since 2009 or something, long time, the instructions the state gives to the auditors, the municipal clerks, is that they're supposed, if they notice any discrepancies between the hand count and the machine count, they're supposed to explain them, period. And so for years, and you can go back and check the records, it's just jaw-dropping in my estimation, municipal clerks all across the state were documenting the fact that the Optech Eagles were not counting absentee ballots correctly because the poll workers didn't know what to do with a ballot that the Optech Eagle couldn't read. And I mean, they were just documenting miscount after miscount after miscount in those audits because, the instructions were just explain the discrepancy and move on.
Not actually try to figure out what the accurate vote count was. And
Oops, let us see here.
That Optech Eagle machine eventually got decertified, but it took years and years and years. And one of the things that helped was this recount that we're going to show you that Carrie did, that actually did document in a much more methodical way.
That is true. I'd forgotten that. Yeah, the Optech Eagle was decertified after this audit that Lulu is going to show you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bennie had a comment in there.
I was saying, oops, nothing to see here. That's just not. It can't fly.
Okay, but again, driving the point home, if we're insisting on verified, accurate election results, we have to insist that audits have standards and procedures ahead of time that say what's going to be done to resolve any discrepancies that are found. It's frighteningly often not the case. The third item here is transparency, and this is the technique that Lulu wants to show you and that we developed. When you're doing a verification of election results, any candidate or voter must be able to see for themselves that the verification process was fair and accurate. Now, outside elections, you can do that by hiring an independent firm that has no interest in the outcome, that has all these certifications and qualifications, and that's enough, for people to say, okay, we can trust this. But there are no objective, disinterested people when it comes to elections. So election audits have to have extreme transparency so that anyone can see for themselves how it's fair and accurate. Okay, yeah.
So I'm gonna show you this photo. This is where I watched the New York City audit from, and you can see. I'll show you where my chair was actually. This is my chair. Can you see it there? My chair is like that little backpack right there, and I'm about 14 feet away from this chain link fence, and the audit was taking place behind this chain link fence with their backs to me most of the time, and this blower was blowing really loud, and I actually couldn't even hear what they were saying. So would that be a transparent audit, Carrie?
Absolutely not. And that's just sad. Not only does it not help you verify that the hand count is accurate, it almost erodes your trust that what they're doing is, and that's a legitimate.
Almost erodes my trust.
Yeah. Not just to verify real trust. And that does the opposite of both. So yeah, that was the problem we were trying to solve. We knew that election officials, number one, absolutely did not want us touching the ballots. They wanted to keep the ballots secure, legit concern. We wanted to be able to see that the count was accurate. Another funny story from Dane County. The first time they did that, to make it transparent, they had the stack of ballots in front of a lead counter who would lift the ballot up in front of his face, read, this is a vote for Walker, and put it down. This is a vote for Jones, put it down.
But no one else could see the ballot but him.
Not even any other counter. The official counters were sitting there just writing down what they heard him say. And get sensible. We need to have a verifiably accurate hand count, and that's not it. So what we decided to do at first was we just used digital ballot images. We got a file of the digital ballot images from the county clerk after they'd already certified, so there was kind of no use in doing it at that point except to demonstrate what could be done. And we developed a projection program that would project the digital ballot images on the screen one at a time. And that worked pretty well for a while, but then we realized we could just use a document projector. You know, you often see these in college classrooms, I think, and maybe in courtrooms, where do you want to touch on that last point about audit results must be binding? Oh, yeah. The fourth point is that you can't do an audit, or you can do an audit, but it's pointless to do an audit, where if you find an error, the election officials have no way to correct it. The hand counts need to be completed before certification and in time for the officials to be able to fix any or resolve any problems they find in the audit.
Right. And it might seem obvious, but in Georgia, for example, the statute is specifically structured so that the risk limiting audit that they do after the election has no result on the election. It's specified in the statute.
To me, that's just frightening. All it does is open the possibility that you might find that the wrong winner was certified and no one has anything they can do about it at that point. That's yeah.
So here's the picture of the setup that Carrie is describing. And do you want to sort of walk us through that briefly? And we do need to move on. I want to get Ken on and make sure we have enough time to talk to him. And I want to show people how this actually works.
Yeah, quickly, the clerk would come in with a stack of ballots, put them on the table underneath the document projector. Around the table, we would have a team. Okay, this race that's okay. Around the table, we would have a team of people. Each one would be counting votes for one candidate. And they had these handheld clickers, the kind they use to count people going in gates at county fairs and that sort of thing. And, as the clerk would move the ballots aside, they could see each ballot on the wall, and they would click if they saw a vote for the candidate they were counting for. And we had two for each candidate whose votes we wanted to count. And then, they put us in a small room here, but you can see that if they had put us in a large room, any number of observers, whoever wanted to observe and count along, could have done it. And that yellow box was filled with clickers. So, we were prepared for observers to come along and invite them to count along.
And we're just going to put a comment up here from Susan Pynchon, another very knowledgeable election expert, who said that Florida also has a completely useless post-election audit that specifically, by statute, is not intended to ever change election results. So
that's just inviting chaos. I just have no idea. Anyway, is there anything more you can see the stack of ballots there under that one?
I'm going to go ahead and show the video so people can really see what this actually looks like in action. This is one of the first times that they demonstrated it. This is with digital ballot images, but later they evolved into doing this with actual ballots, which is just really terrific. And we're going to go ahead and play this. And if you have a question for Carrie, put it in the chat and we'll try to get to that. And then we're going to move on to our next guest, Ken Bennett, former Secretary of State of Arizona. So here is the video of this type of audit that Carrie McKim developed with the Wisconsin election.
It's a real procedure in a real county clerk's verification process. These would probably be trusted, trained, or experienced poll workers. Again, it doesn't require a lot of training, but we're going to have two teams of two. We're going to verify the election results for Paul Soglin, who won the primary according to the voting machines, and Scott Resnick, who came in second and therefore got a place on the general election ballot. We're going to verify those two. These two are going to count votes for Resnick. These two are going to count votes for Soglin independently. They have these clickers, and as the ballots roll by at a rate of 1 per second, Julie's going to click every time she sees a vote for Soglin, and Sue's going to click every time she sees a vote for Resnick. You too, Keith and Gary. And then the slideshow automatically pauses after every 25 ballots. And these two are going to say loudly the number they each independently got. Julie has laryngitis, so you won't be able to hear her. And these two are going to independently say how many votes they counted for Resnick. And you're going to be able to hear their what they say they got. Then if they agree, the total is going to be recorded on another sheet, you know, that total for that 25, and we'll move on. The slideshow will resume. If they disagree, if Julie got 10 and Gary got 9, then all 4 of them, then the last 25 slides are going to be showed again, and all 4 of them are going to count for that candidate. And we're going to check to make sure that we got the right count for that batch of 25. And then we're going to move on.
Here we go. Everybody's counter should be reset to 0.
Thirteen. Okay, our 2 Soglin voters both say 13.
13.
Now, where do we write this down?
Resnick, you could put precinct 23 in there.
How about our 2 Resnick counties?
We both got 6.
Any other Resnick counties in the room? 6? Okay, move on.
Okay. So there is a demonstration of this really brilliant technique that they developed that Carrie really led the way on. They used this in Wisconsin election integrity. And I just want to show you one more quick clip of sort of what this looks like if you're looking at it, say it's being live streamed and you just can see the ballots and they've got this camera close up. So anybody watching, even if I was watching here in New York or Bennie was watching in Memphis, you'd be able to see these ballots go by. So here's what that looks like. Might be a little bit dull.
Ready? Go.
And we see a comment from Virginia Martin, who's also a hand count expert. I love that process. Virginia Martin did hand counts in Columbia County, New York for 10 years. And you can see if this was live streamed, you could count at home. And as long as you had observers there to verify that, you know, everything was being conducted correctly, you would have, don't you think, a great deal of confidence, Carrie?
Yes, it was, everyone was so impressed that they were absolutely confident that the hand count was correct and they did it this way. And I should also say, we started with that stop every 25 ballots, but both the counters and the observers got so confident, you know, after a while, that, you know, they kept upping the number. No, go to 100 before we stop to compare. Go to 200, go to 300.
Wow.
And yeah, and it worked. You could just keep, you're only counting for one candidate, so you can really concentrate.
So it would go pretty rapidly then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing we touched on, any counter could at any point say stop, you know, and the clerk would stop moving the ballots, and then they would just, you know, sort themselves out and go. And that happened a few times. So people didn't, you know, get all tangled. But yeah, it built enormous confidence. The reporter that was present for that, you know, just wanted to write a big article, but his editor said no.
Wow. It's so hard to get people to cover this type of stuff. I just want to show you guys how large the discrepancies were on these machines in Wisconsin that were in use for years and years. They wound up counting was about 5 wards, right, Carrie?
However many are here, 6, I think.
And then on average, they were 2.5% off, but you can see some of those wards were as much as 6% off between the hand count and the machine count. That is crazy.
Enough to sway an election for sure.
And ward by ward, one of them, I think it was Ward 25, if I remember right. If it had just been that ward, it did flip it. They certified that ward for Clinton, and it was actually Trump's.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's get Ken on, and let's see. I think he's been watching this. I want to introduce you all to Ken Bennett. He's the former Secretary of State of Arizona, and I know Bennie and Ken are buddies, so I'm sure you all want to catch up. Say hi.
What's up, Ken?
Hello, Brother Bennie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you, man.
It's good to see you.
So thank you both. Thank you so much for being here. And Kim, were you able to see that process that we just showed that Carrie and her team had developed?
Yes, I found it very interesting and very compelling that we have to be able to count to that degree of consensus and accuracy. And as Carrie's notes pointed out in the slides, candidates or voters or anybody who wants to watch has to be able to watch these processes unfold in a completely transparent way.
And how much time do you think it would have saved them if they had done something like that in the 2020 Arizona audit? I mean, it's so much faster.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this. In the Arizona audit, we hand counted 2.1 million ballots with 3 people. They weren't using clickers, but they were using a tally sheet for 2 races, the U.S. Senate race and the U.S. presidential race. And they were rotating ballots. They could have done it more visually with a projector like Carrie's process does, but the auditor that was selected to do it chose to do it by rotating the physical paper ballot around a circular table, and 3 individuals were writing down on a tally sheet for the 2 races being audited, the U.S. president and the U.S. senator.
They were batches of 50, right, Ken?
They started with batches of 50. Some groups, as Carrie described, got comfortable enough that they would eventually go to 100. I don't think they ever went above 100 in a batch because their little tally sheets were limited at that. But the process I just saw that Carrie is endorsing is excellent. I actually didn't disagree much with the process that the auditors used. I thought that the fundamental finding of the Maricopa County audit in 2020 was kind of lost in the shuffle of the report that the auditors reported, which was that after counting 2.1 million hand or paper ballots, and obviously the race for U.S. president was the key focus because Trump had lost Arizona by 10,457, I think it was. He lost Maricopa County by 40,000. So he won the rest of the state by about 30,000. But when we hand counted Maricopa County, it took us 4.5 months to hand count 2.1 million ballots. The final hand count came out within 350 votes of what the machines had counted in Maricopa County 8 months earlier.
Wow.
And so that's statistically almost identical. And in fact, it was 350 more. Biden didn't win Maricopa County by 40,000. He won by 40,350 or something around that. So as long as you are transparent and you allow people to watch and participate in the process like Carrie's process does as well, I don't think there's one way that you have to do something and no other way can work. I think there can be variations of the same principles that Carrie had on her screen there. So
fair enough. I think what I like about her system is that with the Arizona, with the Maricopa County audit in 2020, they did have about 9 cameras going that live streamed sort of the whole process. You could see the room, you could, see the tables. Right. But this process that she's developed, you can see the ballot. You can sit home and count those ballots yourself. So that's one thing that I think is really unique about it. We've got a good question here for you, Carrie. Tally sheets provide written record of auditors' counts. Do clickers leave a record?
The clickers themselves don't, but whenever we stopped to compare and make sure, these 2 people clicking for, Hillary Clinton got the same result, there was an official keeper of a tally record. And the tally was also projected on another wall. And, then, okay, I'm going to record that you guys found this many votes for Clinton. I'm going to write it down here. Is everyone okay with that? And that became the official record of the hand count.
So you were keeping a written record?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
There has to be a tally, a written record.
I think that's an interesting perspective because I think you probably would prefer to have on camera after everybody clicks, you show what's on the clicker. And I think Ken can speak to this, but I think that's why you guys in Arizona had 3 people, so that in case 2 people wanted to just agree that they wouldn't be able to. So that was the addition, I think that was an additional thing that y'all added to the Arizona audit.
The auditors in Arizona, as you have mentioned, Benny, more often than not, in fact, usually all three would match exactly.
Mhm.
If they had two that matched and the third was only off by one vote,
Mhm.
then they would accept the two that
Majority.
matched.
Mhm.
If the two matched, but the third one was off two or more votes, then they would recount. Very similar to Kerry's approach, where if you don't match exactly. So I think they picked three to kind of hope. I heard one of them say that they picked the three so that as long as two of the three matched and the third one was less than one off, they could go forward. Kerry's approach is two people counting and they have to match exactly. Either one gets you to the level of accuracy that I think we have to have for hand count audits.
Yeah.
Super. And then, Carrie, I'm just going to say thank you so much for being with us. And then I think we're going to pivot here and really try to drill down on what happened in Arizona. But it's really been great to have you. And this is I think, tremendously useful technique for all of us to be more aware of.
Good to see you again, Carrie. I think
Nice
last
to
time I saw
see
you was
too.
virtual.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, Lulu. Yes, we had our election in Arizona November 8th, like everyone else did. We have about 4.1, a little over 4.1 million registered voters in Arizona, just shy of 2.6 million, or almost 63% participated in this election.
Wow.
We had 10 federal races, our U.S. Senate race, and 9 congressional districts that Arizona has. We had 8 statewide offices, including governor. All 5 of the top statewide races, plus we elect, if you can believe it, a mine inspector in Arizona and a couple of people to our utility commission.
Okay, so this is a huge ballot. It's a
Yes.
big ballot.
We also had all 90 legislative races. We have
Oh my
30
God.
districts. In each of the 30 districts throughout Arizona, there's 1 senator, state senator, and 2 state representatives. So all 90 legislative races. But just listen to, kind of how evenly divided Arizona is. By the way, of our registered voters, we have about 34% Republican, 33%, it's a little over 34, but 34% Republican, 33% independent, and 31% Democrat. And then I think we have about 1% libertarian. Very evenly divided, almost a third, a third, a third in Arizona, with Republicans having about a 3% advantage. In the 10 federal races that we elected this year, 6 went Republican, 4 went Democrat. Now that's a flip from prior to this. We were 4 Republican and 6 Democrat. Now, obviously, the Mark Kelly U.S. Senate seat did not change, but of the 9,
just for people who may not be following Arizona politics, so I just want to make sure when you say a race like that, that was the Senate race?
that was the U.S. Senate race.
And which candidate was Republican and which was Democrat?
Mark Kelly was the Democrat incumbent. He was challenged by Blake Masters, Republican, and Kelly, the Democrat, kept the seat by just 3 or 4 points.
Which
but
is
the U.S. Senate seat stayed Democrat. But of the 9 congressional seats, which had been 5 Republicans, excuse me,
6 and 4.
they were, it turned out 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats, but that was a pickup of 2 by the Republicans. So
here's the thing. I don't want to spend too much time focusing on the horse race because everybody talks about the horse race. What we want to talk about here and what we brought you here to tell us about is these details of what happened in Arizona. So one of the things that has been in the news, and you were talking to me about it, is that you have this malfunction with the voting machines where they didn't print dark enough. And that
in our largest county, Maricopa County, the Phoenix area, at about 30% of the 223, I think there are, voting centers, the ballot on demand printers failed to print the ballots dark enough ink, and therefore after the voter had marked their ovals, the ballot tabulation machines would not read those ballots. They put them in a temporary box to handle them and then eventually take them down to the central count machines at county headquarters. But as you can imagine, it created a furor of activity on Twitter and social media that they were having this huge problem. We had a very contested governor's race, and even though on our statewide races, Republicans won 5 out of the 8 races, the top 3, governor, secretary of state, and attorney general, went to Democrats. And so there's allegations now that because of these 30% of the machines, the ballot tabulation machines could not read the ballot on demand printers or printed ballots. We do have 3
Let me
races.
just, I want to follow up with this, okay? Because this really gets down into where people lose confidence. So the ballots were not printed dark enough. Just for starters, we need to really be thinking about that. When we're talking about, like here in New York, moving away from hand-marked paper ballots and to voting machines that would be printing all of the ballots. Imagine what a catastrophe if all of the ballots are being printed and they're not dark enough and the scanners can't read them. So,
right.
So this is just, we really need to be thinking about our increasing more and more reliance on printers and computers in terms of voting. And then what can happen after that when you have a situation like that, where you have equipment break down, and then what happens with the chain of custody? So one of the things you said to me is those ballots, which could not be read by the scanners right there on election day, were put in something called box number 3. Now I want to play a video clip of what happened with some of those ballots, or what somebody who worked there who came forward and said happened to some of those ballots in box number 3. And this is just somebody who testified at the hearings that they had. And actually, that was a wide shot video. I want to get the close-up video because it's a little bit more, you can really see her. So I think I have that one queued up now. And this was on Twitter, and so I happened to see it, but I think we need to listen to this and just kind of think about what exactly is going on.
Poll watcher for both the primaries and the midterms, and I wanted to relay my observations with no commentary or accusation. The door number 3 debacle. When I checked in, I was the afternoon and evening and closing poll watcher. I did confirm that our tabulators were cleared. They were all zeros, but I also did confirm that there was no instruction for inspecting to ensure the door 3 or the slot 3 was empty. So no one, and not a poll worker, not a poll watcher, inspected to make sure it was empty. And the reason that's a point is at the end of the day, we were asked to report the number of voters checked in, the number of ballots that we're transporting, and of those number of ballots, how many were door number 3. We had 1,218 ballots. We had only 1,018 voters that checked in. So, and we had, of those 1,218 ballots, 406 were door number 3. Our rejection rate, which I confirmed with my Democrat poll watcher counterpart, I thought it was maybe 75% at least. He said, oh no, it's at least 90% rejection rate. The 17,000 number that has been publicized as door number 3 ballots is far understated. We were there. The discrepancy and the number of physical ballots that I had, they came from somewhere. We had physically had them. They were not voters that walked in and checked in. We had 200 more ballots than voters that checked in. And I just want that to be on the record.
So those ballots she's talking about that went into door number 3, and when she says it's a 90% rejection rate, she's talking about how many ballots couldn't be read by the scanners. And then she said nobody was able, before they started putting those ballots into door number 3, they didn't have the poll watchers or the poll workers check that the box was empty, apparently. And so then they wound up with 200 more ballots than voters. And we all know that's the wrong direction. You can have more voters than ballots. Sometimes voters leave and they don't cast their ballot, but you never want more ballots than voters. So do you know what's happening with this, or if there's follow-up, or what the latest is on that, Ken?
Well, each of the counties, including Maricopa, are required by state law to canvass the elections by November 28th. Some counties have delayed their canvass in other parts of the state until the last day because they're kind of waiting to see what happened in Maricopa County. 60% of the votes in Arizona occur in Maricopa County. 20% occur in the Tucson area, that's Pima County. And then the whole rest of the state, the other 13 counties, produce the other 20% of votes that are usually cast in Arizona. So what happens in Maricopa County is huge because it's usually 60% plus of the vote that occurs in the entire state. I am very much looking forward to what Maricopa County Elections Department. The Elections Department has 2 co-directors. They work for the Board of Supervisors. 4 of the 5 Board of Supervisor members in Maricopa County are Republican. As you can imagine, they're taking a lot of heat right now. The county recorder that handles all of the voter registration and the mail-in and mail-out ballot process, he's also Republican, taking a lot of heat. Very much looking forward to see how Maricopa documents the kinds of issues and questions that this poll worker just identified. I am aghast at the facts that she's laying out there. And one of the most fundamental things, as you mentioned, Lulu, is we ultimately should have one ballot, no more, no less, for every voter that voted. Now, some of those might be on a machine for handicapped voters or whatever, and it might be a little paper slip of what was entered onto a computer screen. But Arizona, 99.5% of the ballots cast in Arizona are full-size paper ballots. And as was mentioned in Carrie's presentation, that's the gold standard, is paper ballots where the voters have marked on paper what their choices were.
So, Benny, do you want to weigh in here?
No, I think Ken's got it laid out.
So are they gonna, and I know that there was a very tight race for governor also between Carrie Lake and the Democrat, is that, what's her name?
Hobbs, Katie Hobbs.
Right,
Katie Hobbs, the Democrat, is winning by about 17,000 votes out of 2.5 million or so. That is 6.5%, which unfortunately is just outside the threshold in Arizona for an automatic recount, which is 0.5%. But 2 of our statewide races, the Attorney General race is within 510 votes out of 2.5 million votes in that particular race. It's literally 50.0 to 50.0. That will trigger an automatic recount of the Attorney General race. And then our state superintendent of public instruction is well within the 0.5%. So one of the fortunate things that's going to happen in Arizona is after the counties do their canvass on November 28th, and the Secretary of State's office does the statewide canvass about a week later, 2 of our statewide races are going to trigger automatic recounts. And there's one legislative district in Maricopa County that is close enough that it's going to trigger a recount. So every county, the 15 counties in Arizona, are going to have to recount all of the ballots for those 2 statewide races. Maricopa is going to have to do the same, but they're going to also have to recount a 3rd race, which is one of their legislative districts.
But now, one thing I do want to jump in here. So when they recount in Arizona, and what you've laid out for us is that the margin between the races, if it's 0.5%, so that's 0.5% for people, that's a very, very close race. If it's 0.5% or closer, then they do the recount. But it's a machine recount. They're not going to count by hand.
No, it's a recount using the paper ballots going through the same machines. They'll have to do the logic and accuracy test again on the machines that the counties want to use. Those machines will be programmed to not read all the other races on the ballot, but just the two that are scheduled for recount, 3 in Maricopa County with that legislative district. But yes, it's a recount using the machines as they did in the original election.
Now, I
Arizona,
brought our auditing expert back here, Gary
okay.
McKim.
Well, Arizona
because,
does now. Well, before we go to the auditing expert,
okay.
Arizona does have a hand count audit requirement. Within 24 hours after the election is conducted, so November 8th, every county in Arizona is required to do a hand count audit of between 1 and 2% of their ballots. And the counties did that. And to my knowledge, I'm not aware of any of the 15 counties whose hand count audit differed from the machine count that the machines had counted the day before. In Arizona, you have to do a hand count audit of between 1 to 2% of the ballots. If the human hand count audit is different from the machine count by 0.5% or more, you have to double it to 4%. If that hand count by humans differs from the machine count by more than 1/2%, you have to hand count all of the ballots in the county. So we've had hand count audits in Arizona for 20 years. But in all of those 20 years, including 6 years I was Secretary of State, 2009 to 2015, we've never had a human hand count of the 1 to 2% of the ballots that differed from the machine count by more than 0.5%. We've never had to double to the 4% hand count. Therefore, that's never been off. No county has ever had to hand count all of their ballots. We've always been within that 0.5% threshold on the first hand count audit.
Now, let me just ask you, are those transparent hand count audits? Can the public come and watch them?
Yeah, the parties are allowed to send observers. I don't think they're as transparent as we should make them, where the public can see them in a way that Carrie's method was describing earlier in that. But they hand count at tables, usually a few to dozens of tables, depending on the size of the county. And our hand count audit requires that the hand count is done on the batches of ballots by counters from different parties, and they have to come to the same agreement that Carrie's method was showing earlier.
And we've got some questions for you in the chat. Virginia Martin wants to know, how are the ballots to be hand counted chosen? And are all races on each ballot hand counted?
Okay. In Arizona, the counties have to identify the batches of ballots as they were being processed, and they have to randomly select. The parties get to send in individuals who randomly select the 1 to 2% of the batches that are hand counted.
Do you like that? And just checking in with our auditing expert, Carrie, do you like that for a random choice? They send in somebody to pick it?
I'm sorry, what?
Ken says that for these 1 to 2% of hand count audit that they do after every election, they send someone in to randomly pick which ballots they're going to choose.
Yeah, there's many different ways you can do a random selection. One way is, okay, and again, it's just one of a billion different ways you could randomly select. Take the stack of ballots, have someone roll a dice publicly, and the dice has 25 or whatever, you get a 55 ballot, one of those fancy dices or something. And then, you pick the 25th ballot down and you pull that one. That's one way to do it. There's many different ways you can do a transparent random selection.
Super. So dice are always a good option there. And then are all the races on each ballot hand counted?
No, the Arizona hand count statute requires that the people who randomly select which 1 or 2% of the batches are going to be hand counted. They also select 5 races a statewide, a legislative, they can go down to some local offices, but usually the hand count audit randomly selects 5 of the races on the ballot.
Not too bad.
So
That's
it's fair.
good to randomly select the races too, because then if anyone wants to, mess with the election beforehand, they don't know which races are going to be
Yeah,
checked.
they don't. Yeah,
that's good.
you don't know before the election which races are going to be hand counted, and you don't know before the election which batches of ballots are going to be included in the 1 to 2% random selection.
The other thing I wanted to point out, just to say amen to what Ken described, when he said, if the discrepancy is bigger than this certain teeny tiny amount, then we expand and count more ballots and expand and count. That's called audit expansion. Those are the instructions you should be giving to the hand counters. If they find a discrepancy, just keep going and auditing more and more and more until we are absolutely sure who won this election. That's the right thing.
Super. And then what was your thought about the recount happening by running the ballots through the machine, the same voting machine again?
That leaves questions unanswered about whether the voting machines, were accurately programmed or not. I mean, Ken, you mentioned they reprogram the machines enough so that they don't count any races that aren't being recounted, but
Correct.
They don't really go in there and reprogram the machines to be in a different way than they were programmed on election day. And if someone had gotten in there and given the machine bad instructions for counting votes, that sort of an audit wouldn't catch it.
Correct.
Right. So we would be preferring to see those races with some kind of hand count, some sort of more transparent hand count.
As a professional auditor, I would have to say those machine recounts, especially if you use the same computer programs, are not capable of verifying the election results.
Super. And then
I'd like to see our hand counts, or I'd like to see some automatic audits in Arizona with a different election management system.
Change it all the way.
Auditing whatever election management system the count in Arizona. We have 15 counties. We use, between those 15 counties, 3 systems. Maricopa uses Dominion. One of the counties up north, Yavapai, where I live, uses Unison, and the 13 other counties use ES&S. I think I'd like to see us go to a situation where when we do these audits and or these hand counts, that we're not recounting the same ballots on the same system. We count it on one of the other systems that's available to be used.
That's what we're doing here in New York, actually. We're counting on like ES&S or Dominion, and then they do the audits on the clear ballot. I personally would prefer to see a hand count audit because it's more transparent and it boosts confidence. There is nothing like a good hand count audit that can really boost confidence if it's done correctly and in a transparent way. And then we've got a comment from Susan Pynchon, and then I think that's all we're going to have time for. Susan says, I've been told that the flaw in the Maricopa hand count audit is that 52 batches are pre-selected. And then party representatives randomly pick 26 batches out of the 52 that were not random.
And Susan's exactly right that this is a deficiency, I think, in Arizona's hand count audit, that as the batches, mostly of early ballots, start to come back in, Arizona cuts off voter registration 29 days before the election. At the 27th day before the election, they open early voting centers and also mail out the ballots to voters who were on the used to be called PEVL, permanent early voter list. Now it's AVL, active early voter list. But Susan's correct that one of the deficiencies is that the county selects 1 or 2 a day as batches come back in. And they, for example, in Maricopa County, I think 2 years ago, they had 52 batches. Smaller counties would have fewer batches. And the party representatives that got to come in and randomly select batches, they were only randomly selecting half of the 52 batches that Maricopa County had set aside or identified in the first place. And that, I think, fails to be transparent as to a real random selection. Maricopa County, when we did the audit in 2020 of the Biden-Trump race, I think Maricopa County had over 10,300 batches that they had processed in the election, usually 200 or so in those batches. But the hand count audit was done 26 of these early 52 batches that the county had kind of set aside themselves. That is not a real random selection of the 10,000 batches.
Well, thank you so much to Susan Pynchon for pointing that out. She's so great. We have such knowledgeable guests on these forums, and it's really helpful. And Susan did point out one other thing, and she said that in addition to being Arizona's former Secretary of State, Ken was just elected as state senator in the 2022 midterm election. So congratulations to you. And
Thank you.
Well done on your race there.
Thank
So
you.
that's a nice note to end on. And we can't thank you enough for being on here. So there will or will not be a recount or an audit of the governor's race between Kerry Lake and Hobbs. We don't know yet.
Because that race is 0.65% between the two of them, it's just barely outside the 0.5% threshold that triggers an automatic recount in Arizona. So unless I have considered calling publicly for when the Secretary of State's office goes to court, because even though it's an automatic recount, the statute says that the Secretary of State's office has to go to a court to have a court declare that the recount is going to happen. I have considered calling or suggesting that in addition to the two races, statewide races that are within 0.5%, it would take no more time and no more money to add a third race. They're still going to have to run every ballot through, and instead of programming the machines to count two races, they could just as easily, just as quickly, and without any additional expense, count three races instead of two. But as it is right now, it'll probably be two.
Very interesting. So I'm sure the Democrats, if they stay in the lead right now, would prefer that not happen. So we're nonpartisan here. We're just interested in transparency and confidence. So we'll wait and see. And we really appreciate you keeping us in the loop. And we'll be following on in terms of how those ballots get, attended to. Is there more attention paid to those ballots that were in door number 3 that were, very light and that there was, some trouble with? So we'll be trying to follow up on that and understand more about, how that's, how that's going to be processed. So thank you both so much for being here with us. Ken's in Utah now with his daughter, and it's so nice of you to take the time to spend with us and carry you as well.
Thank you.
Super. Okay, and then we're just gonna close it out now here with a few comments. We did have a comment from Chris. He wants to hear why Bennie voted not to certify. You have a short answer, and we can go into it more next month.
Yes, short answer, we didn't follow the law. We didn't do anything with ballot images, and they said that the cast vote records were technically not public records.
I see.
No.
And does the law provide for the ballot images to be public records?
She didn't even confirm whether or not they were keeping them. So it's just a lot.
So
I asked twice, like, what are we doing with the images? Where the cast vote records? And they was like, well, we don't know if we can disclose this stuff. So I was like, nope, I'm not certifying it.
Okay, so
we're on a brand new system, but it's becoming more opaque, even though all of these clearly definable, transparent records exist.
So you're not getting access to those records, even though, so in Memphis, just so people know, they had hand-marked paper ballots for the first time, right, Bennie? Is this first time?
We have the option to choose. We're a hybrid. We have both BMD and paper ballots.
Right, but you're not sensing that the paper ballots are giving you an increased level of transparency?
No.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's
So
rough.
we've got a comment from Kate Ray. Excellent forum again. Thank all guests and forum organizers. We really appreciate it. If you have positive comments, please do put them in the chat. It does help us to let people know about the work that we're doing here. And I want to just let you know sort of what's coming up. We're trying to get better at planning in advance. So we've got some really great forums coming up for you. In December, we are always on the 4th Tuesday of the month now. And so in December, which I believe is the 27th, we are going to talk about what's happening in New York, which is really dire at this point. It is possible that we are trading in the system we have now, where voters have a choice between hand-marked paper ballots and a ballot marker for voters with disabilities, voters who choose a ballot marker. We could be moving to all ballot marker voting systems where everybody votes on an ATM style touchscreen that counts votes with barcodes. And we have been fighting that for 3 years, and it's really coming down to the wire now. So we want to really fill you in on that. Please come back and stay with us for that forum, which is December 27th. And then in January, we're going to do a really interesting forum about voting on the internet. We have a video of a hacker actually hacking a ballot in transition while it's being emailed. That's going to be fascinating. And in February, we're lining up some pretty interesting guests for you as well. So please do mark that as a recurring date on your calendar. It's the 4th Tuesday of the month. Great presentation. We really appreciate those comments. Thanks so much for being with us, Doctor. And we want to let you know also, you are our PR machine. And so you can let people know about our forums as well. When you get our emails, forward them to your friends and your networks. You can also please follow and like us on Facebook. That actually helps a lot. And you can follow us on TikTok now. We're on TikTok, as well as Instagram. Often we post on LinkedIn and, of course, on YouTube. If you can, please, if you're there on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. It actually helps for you to follow us on social media, for you to forward and love the posts that we're making and to send them to your friends. You are our PR machine, and we want that love on social media. Okay, so I think that's it. Oh, wait, we want Ken to sing. Ken, will you sing us something for Thanksgiving? Wait, he's
Come on,
saying no,
Ken.
you will. Please, come on. One little just song to show us out.
No.
No singing?
I don't. I always sing with my guitar, and I don't have I couldn't carry it on the plane, so maybe on a subsequent one, I'll arrange for that. But
Gotta
no,
have a tune. Gotta be able
Okay,
to hear
I'll tell
it.
you what you can do. So this is what we do at the end of the show. We all shout together. This is what democracy looks like. So you can shout that with us. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. This is what democracy looks like.
Looks like.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.